something very different from anything I have done before as far as teaching class. We're going to look at Ezekiel 40, beginning with verse 2 will be the first one, and it's up on the board. It says, oh, blank? Does that sound that better? Can you see that better? Ezekiel writes in visions of God, He took me to the land of Israel and set me down on a very high mountain. And what he saw down that slope resembled a city, not a temple per se, but it looked to him to be large enough and not only beautiful enough that he said this thing resembles a city. And he brought me there, and he sees a man with a measuring cord. And he's the one that's going to do all of the measuring. Pay attention in verse 4 to everything I'm going to show you, for you have been brought here so that I might show it to you. Report everything you see to the house of Israel. So, the angel is going to take us in, let me see, verse 2. Yeah, I mean, southern slope resembles the city. The first thing we learn about, let's see, that a wall runs about the building. It's square, and there's some considerable debate. Considerable debate about the wall that runs around it. We'll get into that when we get there. Most of the translations I have in mind say that each side of the square is 875 feet around the outer wall. And that's from verse 5. At least the fact that there's a wall there. And the wall is only 10.5 feet high, and its height was the same. So if you were trying to build a city to keep out invaders, you don't make it that short. You would make it that thick, of course, but 10.5 feet high is not nearly enough to keep out invaders. So that gives us a hint right away that it is something different from any city that might have been built at that time. So this wall is 10.5 feet thick and 10.5 feet high. Now looking at verses 15 through 20, it says, that's 2 chapters ahead, and I know that. When he finished measuring, this is the man that was with Ezekiel, inside the temple complex, he led me out by the way of the gate that faced east. That's the way he came in. And measured all around the complex. He measured the east side with a measuring rod. It was 875 feet. He measured the north side. It was 875 feet. He measured the south side. It was 875 feet. And then he turned to the west side, and guess what? It was 875 feet by the measuring rod. So he measured the temple complex on all 4 sides. It had a wall all around it, 875 feet long and 875 feet wide. What for? To be able to separate between what was holy from the common. What's another word for common? Unholy. Well, it doesn't mean it's bad. It means it just doesn't fit God's definition or His choice of what is holy or sacred or set apart by Him. And I guess that's why the wall is 10.5 feet thick, to make sure there is no communication there between the unholy things and people, or common, outside and what is inside the temple complex itself. Now, there are 3 other gates in the wall. Let's see, did I finish that? Oh, here, I'll tell you what, this is a good point to talk about that. I just mentioned it. This is the New King James. Especially looking at verse 16. This is the same passage we just read in the Christian Standard. He measured the east side with a measuring rod, 500 rods of the measuring rod all the way around. Verse 17, 500 rods. Verse 18, 500 rods on the south. And verse 19, 500 rods on the west side. So everything is measured in rods. A rod, or if you've got the King James, a reed, is 10.5 feet long. Ezekiel chapter 40, I think it's verse 5. Now there was a wall surrounding the outside of the temple. A measuring rod in the man's hand was 6 units of 21 inches, which is a cubit. So 500 times 10.5 feet equals 5,250 feet for each wall, instead of what every translation I could find had 875 feet long. A cubit is 21 inches long, Ezekiel chapter 40, verse 5. We just looked at it. We'll get back to it. So it's, if you take that dimension, it's 500 cubits times 21 inches per cubit, is 875 feet for its wall. So we've got a discrepancy there that we're not sure, but most of the scholars that I checked go with the cubit measurement, 500 cubits around or 875 feet around the wall. 5,250 feet is almost a what? It's almost a mile. So that would make it bigger than Mount Zion could handle. Mount Zion is very small. The city of David, on the southern tip of that mountain, it's not a mile wide. Anyway, if you've got the New King James, I just wanted to let you know that there are other translations. And let's look at verse 5 again. The measuring rod in the man's hand was 6 units of 21 inches. 6 times 21 is 126 inches divided by 12 equals 10.5 feet. That's how you come up with how long the rod is. It'd be similar to what we would call a yardstick. Each unit was the standard length plus a very long 10.5 foot yardstick, yes. Each unit, that's cubit, was the standard length, which was 18 plus 3 inches. That's how you come up with 21-inch cubit. Many places in the Bible, a cubit is 18 inches. And this is a long cubit or a large cubit, so it helps you. If you're fighting the cubit battle throughout chapter 40, 41, and 42, you'll know at least that the cubit you're looking at is 21 inches, which is the width of a man's hand. Tip his elbow to the tip of his fingers, plus 3 more inches of span. He measured the thickness of the wall, and we've already gone through that. Any questions about how we got there? And I'm not good at math. Okay, I hope I got it right. Okay, let's see. I don't need that one. That one's blank. Oh, yeah, it's got 3 outer gates. 1. That's the north gate. That's the south gate. And that's the east gate. That's how the prophet was brought into the temple, was through the east gate. If you'll notice, there is no gate on the west. No gate. The gates are identical. They are identical. The porches on these gates on the outer wall are on the, I think they are on the inside of the gate. Now, a gate is not simply a wall with a swinging door. It's much more complicated than that in this temple vision, and we'll see some more of that as we go along. He climbed, that's 40 verse 6, he climbed to the gate that faced east and climbed its steps. He measured the threshold of the gate. It was 10 feet deep. The first threshold was 10 feet deep. And remember, I'm using the Christian Standard Bible because it gives us feet and inches. So that's the east gate he's talking about. And then he measures in verse 20 through 27 the gate of the outer court facing north. That's the gate in the outer wall. And then in verse 24, he measures the gate on the south and gives us all of this information about its jambs, its portico. I think a portico is a porch, isn't it? Okay. Its windows, its palm trees. The distance from gate to gate was 175 feet. Verse 23 and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, I think this is telling us that we have to enter the gate on the east via 7 steps. And keep that in mind, because the rest of the gates are not 7 steps. That tells you that the ground surrounding the temple complex is lower than the temple complex itself. Let's see. What I have endeavored to do was to give you, for instance, the picture for the drawing, by the way, and then give you the verses that support that or tell us about that. We will not cover every single verse. He'll go through and measure one gate and then give you the entire thing all over again on the other gate, and then do it all over again on the third gate. You're welcome to read that, but we will not cover all of that in the class if you don't mind. He climbed the gate that faced east and climbed its steps. He measured the threshold of the gate. It was 10.5 feet, blah, 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 so on and so forth. And in verse 22, the north gate, window, portico, and palm trees had the same measurements as those of the gate that faced east. Now we learn about how many steps. He didn't mention it on the other gate, but he does mention it here. 7 steps led up to the gate, and its portico or porch was ahead of them. And then in verse 26, he tells us the south gate also had the 7 steps leading up to it. Okay. The gate entrance is right there. He measured the width of the gate's entrance. It was 17.5 feet wide. Pretty good size. My front door is 3 feet. 17-foot entrance, while the width of the entire gate, that is from jamb to jamb, is 22.75 feet. That was just 17.5 is just the opening.
Is that sort of including the portico? I looked at it, and the difference in a porch and a portico is a porch usually the floor also extends.
Did you, the floor what?
Will also extend out from the porch.
Okay.
So this portico is kind of included. So is that probably going to be the width of the portico as well?
I don't know. I confess there's many measurements here in terms I do not understand. If I was an architect, especially if I was a Hebrew architect, I would probably understand this a whole lot better. Now inside the gate are 6 guard rooms, 3 on each side of each gate. Right there, 3 on each side. Now, why would you put a guard room there unless you were very concerned about nothing from the outside which is common, ever reaching the inside which is holy and contaminating it. And so 6 guards at each gate gives us another hint of the holiness that God demands of the temple. And if he demands that of the temple, he also demands that of his people. Okay, 6 guard rooms. I think I've got a close-up of these gates. And I've got a 6-minute video too at the end of the, there's the gate. Looking from the top down. It has 3 recesses for the temple guards. There's the first one, there's the second one, and there's the third one on the left side, and here's the 4th, 5th, and 6th ones on the right side. Let's see, yeah, gate, okay. I'm trying to look at that. Oops, let me back up just a minute. This area here, Jennifer, would be the portico. Does that tell you anything about?
Yeah, and I looked back and it said that the portico of the gate is 14 feet and its pilasters were 3.5 feet.
14 feet.
So that would be, I don't know how many pilasters there would be, but if it's the total, then that would be the 17.5. But I mean, it's just detail, it's just detail.
Well, now, 17 and a half is the width of this gate. You see that figure right there? 17 and a half. So this one would be wider, wouldn't it? If that drawing is accurate.
Yeah.
By the way, if you've got a study Bible, you've probably got a diagram in your study Bible, or if you've got a dictionary at home, it probably has a diagram of the floor plan of Ezekiel's temple. But remember this, they all not going to be exactly the same. They have not found the original blueprints. No.
But there's the 14 feet, and then pilasters are 3.5, so that's that part of it.
Now, 14 feet is in this direction, yeah. Anyway, that'll help you a little bit with what a important structure these gates are. Yes, ma'am.
What version is it?
Christian Standard Bible. You're welcome. You're welcome. The Message also has feet and inches, and several others have it. The Holman Christian Standard also has it, yeah.
Mine has all the same.
Okay. Let's see, I don't know why I've got that one there. He's talking about the recesses. That's the 10.5-foot square, by 10.5-foot square guard chambers. Each chamber is 10.5-foot square. And there's a recess. Let me go back. A recess. You can see there's a large space between each of the 10.5-foot. Why that's that way, I don't know, but there was a large space between those guard posts. The 3 recesses on each side of the east gate. That's the guard's quarters with the same measurements. That's chapter 40, verse 10. And let's see. And then, of course, there was a corridor leading, a hallway leading, of course, through that, going all the way to the inside of the temple, portico or the porch. The only difference between the gates on the outer walls, the 3 gates, and the gates on the inner walls is that the portico on the outer walls face the inside of the temple complex. They're on the inside. On the 3 gates on the inner court, north, south, and east, face the other way. In other words, they're looking at each other. They're mirror images of each other. They're looking at each other. But otherwise, they are identical. And I think you'll see that next time you see it. Yeah. If you'll look at the stairs, on this one, and this one, and this one, and this one are looking at each other, and this one, and that one, and that one. The portico is on the inside of that one, and they're on that one, and they are looking at each other. In fact, if you were standing out here, and the gate was open, you could look all the way through, if this gate was open, all the way through to the most holy place, if all the gates were open. All the way through. Of course, I doubt that ever happened. Moving west out of the porch of the east gate, we come to what is going to be called throughout your scriptures, generally the outer court, or if you prefer, the court of the priests, okay, we call them the Levites. Verse 17 of chapter 40, then he brought me into the outer court, and there were chambers and a paved surface laid out all around the court. 30 chambers faced the pavement, and there they are. They run all the way down. You see, I don't know if you can read that number 4, but there are 30 of them that run on 3 of the walls. And which were probably, but we were not told, perhaps living quarters for those who were temple workers. And they didn't want to go outside and come back in because they have to purify themselves again. So that's probably where these 30 outer rooms, that's probably what they were for. Now, in the 4 corners, of the kitchen, 4 corners of the outer wall, there are kitchens. 1, 2, 3, 4. And what do you think those were for? The sacrifices. Okay? And maybe some other uses, but it was where the sacrifices were prepared. I think we've got the verses here for those 4 kitchens. Verse chapter 46 is where we find out about the information about these kitchens. Next, he brought me into the outer court and led me past its 4 corners. There was a separate court in each of its corners. In the 4 corners of the outer court, there were enclosed courts, and these, how big they were, 70 feet by 52.5 feet wide. All 4 corners had the same dimensions. There was a stone wall around the outside of them, and that was probably the exterior 10.5-foot wall, and with ovens built in at the base of the walls on all sides. He said to me, these are the kitchens where those who minister at the temple will cook the people's sacrifices. Now, why would you cook the sacrifices? See how many you know. How many of you know? What?
Their food. That's priest food.
Somebody's got to feed the priests. And remember, they weren't given any land. And God said, I will be your inheritance. None of the priests had any land inheritance at all. So they were going to be supported by the people, by their sacrifices and gifts. And so that's why they were, some of the sacrifices were boiled, some were put on the altar of burnt offerings, and anyway, the priests were to get a portion of some of the sacrifices, and we'll look a little bit more closely at that as we go through a little bit later. Now, the floor around the perimeter is called the lower pavement. There it is. I've got several arrows pointing it out. If you'll notice, it's the same depth from the outside wall as the gates are. However far the gates on the outside protrude in, there was a pavement that walked all the way around between each gate. Probably It had a roof supported by columns. I'm guessing, a colonnade, I think they call it. It may have, but there's no mention of it. But I think in Solomon's temple they may have had one. But my recollection there is a little bit fuzzy. Okay. There it is, chapter 40, verse 15. Then he brought me, 17, then he brought me into the outer court, and there were chambers and paved and a paved surface laid out all around the court. That's those 30 along the north, south, and east side, which flanked the courtyard's gates and corresponded to the length of the gates. They were the same distance thick as the gates were. They extended just as far as the gates. Stop me if you're totally confused. On the other hand, don't. Let me go ahead and finish this. It's not too bad.
Lord, you're talking about the chambers all the way around?
Yeah.
There's just 8 on each wall. There's 3 on the other
Oh,
wall.
yeah, you're right. I'm sorry, I forgot about these. That's 6.
That makes sense.
24 plus 6 is
It's 30.
30. Eagle eye.
So it'd be 4 walls.
Very good. I'm sorry?
It'd be the 4 walls.
Yes, it's on the 4 walls. Yeah. I completely missed that. Okay. All right, how many steps were on the gates when you came from outside the complex? 7. Okay. The interior gates have 8 steps. So you're going up again, a pretty good amount. That's in what is called, they lead up through each gate, north, east, and south, and lead to what is called in here. This is the outer court, and this is the inner court. And you got 7 steps here, but you got 8 steps more to get into the interior of the inner court.
Evidently, the 13, I don't remember this, but evidently there were 13 leading, 8, 7 leading into the original temple too. And in Herod's temple, because how that was set up, that I read a few months ago, there were 13 of those, and they were said at each step.
1 per step, as they step.
As they step
Okay.
up.
And you reminded me of something. This is not identical to the temple Solomon built about 4 centuries earlier, but it's similar. It's similar. Okay?
Is this a real temple or is this one he is?
It's the one he sees in the vision. It has never been built except for our friends who are of the premillennial understanding, and Zionist Jews are still waiting to build this temple on the mount in Jerusalem where the Muslim Golden Dome of the Rock mosque is built. And that's what they intend to do, and that's what they say is going to happen. That's where Ezekiel's temple is going to be built. And all we're seeing is a vision that Ezekiel sees so far. Okay. Let's see. All right, we've covered that. Now, we're in the inner court. Let's put ourselves in the inner court. When he brought me to the inner court, he measured and measured. Oh, and there's verse 37. It's stairway, chapter 40, verse 37. This one had 8 steps. Okay. Inner gates, north, east, south, and I'm not sure why I've got that there. Yeah. The south gate, the porch, face the outer court. The east gate, the porch, portico face the outer court, and the same on the other gate. Okay, now, this is hard to see, but right here and right here, even though it's not there, are what is called the rooms see, one is by the north gate, right here, and it points south. The other one is by the south gate. What was that, number 11 or number, let me see which one I'm looking at. Number 11. Number 12. There are two other rooms, one, okay, number 12. There's one there looking south, and there's one here, even though it's missing, that looks north. And I think I've got the verses on those because those are interesting. Outside the inner gate, within the inner court, there were chambers for the singers, one beside the north gate facing south, and another beside the south gate facing north. Then the man said to me, this chamber that faces south, after telling us it was for the singers, I'm a little confused there. The chamber that faces south is for the priests in verse 45 who keep charge of the temple. The chamber that faces north is for the priests who keep charge of the altar. These are the sons of Zadok, the ones from the sons of Levi, who may approach the Lord to serve him. Next, he measured the court. It was a square, 175 feet square, and the altar was in front of the temple. Let me go back just a minute here. Okay. See, what's got me confused is verse 44 said the chambers are for the singers, right? And then he says in verse 45, it's for priests who keep charge of the temple. Maybe it's fine. Obviously it was for both. Okay? Now we're looking at the inner north gate. And we're looking at some washrooms right there, number 11. That's on the, and one of them is at each, attached to the side of each porch, on each gate.
Hang on.
Yeah,
You said that was confusing about the singers.
yeah, can you help me?
This does say, I have one thing that says, it reads there were two chambers. And the singers part is confusing because it says, one beside the north gate facing south and another beside the south gate facing north. Then the man said to me, this chamber that faces south is for the priests who keep charge of the temple.
Yeah.
The chamber that faces north is for the priests who keep charge of the altar.
Yeah.
So it's like, I know, so it's like the singers are just like hanging out somewhere.
Well, it's just like at funeral homes everywhere, they just kick us in the ball.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it's almost like they mention them, but they don't, like, they're not anywhere or something, I don't know, okay.
Maybe they're on the ball.
It makes you wonder about that 13 up there.
Yeah.
You know, we don't see another 12 that points, to the north, but then there's this other little thing hanging out, maybe it's something completely different.
Yeah. I don't know. I didn't say that everything makes sense and that everything is precise and clear and easy to understand and, okay, this little number 11, that those arrows are pointing to, that are attached to the three inner gates. This is a chamber beside the north gate for washing and getting the sacrifices ready for slaughter. And I think that's verse 38. There was a chamber whose door opened into the north gate's portico. You can see right there. It opens right into the portico section, and there's a little break there so that it will open into the gate building itself. The burnt offering was to be washed there. And then we're going to learn about some tables. And this is still in the inner court. The altar in the inner court is located there. And this time, we have 10 steps going up to the holy place. Verse 18, number 18 is the most holy place. There are tables near every washing chamber mentioned in number 11. Right there, and right there. I think there's 12 tables total, and I think I've got those. The inner court, by the way, was 175 feet square. And the altar was in front of the temple. Let's see, look at that inner court. Right. Oh, the tables. Inside the gates portico, there were 2 tables on each side on which to slaughter the burnt offering, the sin offering, and the guilt offering. Outside, as one approaches the entrance to the north gate, there were 2 tables on one side and 2 more tables on the other side of the gate portico. So there were 4 tables inside the gate and 4 tables outside. 8 tables in all on which the slaughtering was to be done. There were also 4 tables, and these, apparently the first tables we've been talking about are wooden, because it points out in verse 42 that there were 4 tables of stone cut out for the burnt offering, 31.5 inches square and 21 inches high. The utensils used to slaughter the burnt offering and other sacrifices were placed on them. There were 3-inch hooks fastened all around the inside of the room, and the flesh of the altar of the offering was to be laid on the tables. It reminds me of a meat locker. Okay, they take the bullet in there, cut him in pieces on these tables, and then hang them, I guess, for a while on those 3-inch hooks until they can be cooked in one of the 4 kitchens on each of the 4 corners, and that's just speculation on my part.
Except the stone table was burnt offerings. So they were cooked on the altar.
That's right. The burnt offering was completely consumed on the altar, yeah. Let's see. Dead center is the court, the inner court is right there. I think I've already mentioned the altar is right there. And the 10 steps are right there to go up into the holy place. It was 175 feet square, and the altar was in front of the temple. And there's the inner court and the altar of burnt offering. That's what it was. And there's the 10 steps again. I've got that in there twice. Let's see, the portico on that gate was 35 feet across and 21 feet deep. And what I wanted to point out to you was that 10 steps lead up to it. So you had 7 on the outer gate, 8 on the inner court, and then when you get into the most holy place, it was 10 more steps higher to get into that. So you're pretty well up. Yes, ma'am.
So, I'm curious. So all of the sacrifice on the altar, or were some of them kept to feed the feast?
No.
Some of them were bulk. It depends on if it was a burnt offering or if it was
Sin offering or a grain offering. We are going to take a little bit closer look at all of these offerings, because they're all different. They are all, I'm sorry?
The ones on the altar were burned to the crisp.
Yes, they were. In fact, they called it a Holocaust.
So I was wondering how they were ended up in the feast.
I'm sorry?
those, the priests were not given part of them. But that was atoning sacrifice. That was the only one that was burned all the way. And the rest of them, most of the sacrifices, they were only sacrificed the the hide was taken off of them, and just the fat part of the kidneys, the liver, and its fat covering, the fat tail.
I tell you what, if you want a lesson on the sacrifices, read Leviticus, the first 8 chapters. And it'll tell you all about every sacrifice and how it was to be done. Now, there is some additional information later on in Numbers and Deuteronomy, but the gist of the information on the sacrifices was in the book of Leviticus, because the book of Leviticus was written for priests, Levi, Leviticus, the priest book. So that's where you would expect to find, oh my goodness, it's 5 after. I'm sorry. Okay.
Didn't the Levites lead worship?
Didn't the Levites what?
Lead worship or sing?
Yes, one family of Aaron's family led, one division led the singing. So they were, the singers were also priests.
Right, so
Yes.
that's why it was all in the same room.
And that family of priests that had those 2 groups.
I can't hear you.
See, that's why it was probably in the same.
Same room? Oh, okay. I don't have a problem with them contaminating each other. I just have a problem with the first saying that, hey, these are for the singers and then they're for the priests. But the other one was just for the priests. I just found that a little bit unusual. The sacrifices are another subject altogether. They can take a lot of time to go through and try to figure out. Because they're not exactly sometimes totally clear, but it's clearer than this. Measurements.
Because we've always, we haven't necessarily taught, but we've always taught that the sacrifices were male without defect, but that's not the case. Female animals were also allowed to be sacrificed.
Under
certain sacrifices.
Certain situations, yeah. Let's offer prayers to all. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for your message. And again tonight, we ask for your understanding and to see the purpose for which these things are written and give us understanding. But today, we also ask that you give us love for one another and help us to love Jesus